BMW has over-the-air software updates for their cars, unless your car is parked on an incline of 7% or more. Said a BMW spokesperson, "We're just big fans of pinball machines, so we thought there should be a tilt error."
Nazis plotted to sabotage a U.S. power grid, and you won't believe the reason why. Turns out they're racists.
Racist Nazis are my least favorite kind of Nazis.
Absolutely.
The world's first 40-passenger hydrogen-electric airplane is ready for its maiden flight. Good thing there's no history of anything going wrong with hydrogen aircraft.
All that and more on this week's edition of the Clean Energy Show.
All right, so I want to talk about hydrogen airplanes. This is something we talk about every once in a while. Air travel is going to be one of the hardest things to switch over to clean energy. In spite of making my sort of hydrogen joke off the top of the show, I'm in favor of hydrogen aircraft, assuming they can figure out a way to do it that they don't explode. Yeah, this is a 40-passenger airplane that's now been given clearance from the FAA for flight testing. And so one of the problems with electric aircraft or hydrogen electric aircraft is the batteries. The batteries tend to be really heavy, and this is the thing that's going to hold back electric air travel. So like with a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle, a car, it typically has a small battery in it,
yeah,
like a hybrid does,
right,
like a Prius does. Yeah.
It's kind of like a buffer.
Yeah, it's like a buffer.
It draws the fuel cell. It's powered. The electric motor is powered by the battery at all times, and the battery is recharged by hydrogen. Apparently at variable. If you need a lot of, if you floor the car, the battery will have that buffer to make up for whatever's available.
Yeah, so like a hydrogen fuel cell car is really an electric car. It's just that instead of a battery for the storage is the hydrogen itself. Well, with this flight, that's a company called Universal Hydrogen. Apparently they've gotten rid of the batteries. They've figured out how to just have the energy come from the hydrogen fuel cell directly to power the aircraft, and so they don't have to have the batteries, which makes it lighter.
I might want to have a little bit of battery. That makes me nervous.
Well, yes, I mean, that makes me nervous too, but I mean, I'm not an airplane engineer, so, I'm skeptical about this kind of thing, but, I don't know. Maybe it'll work. I don't know.
The whole hydrogen thing. I don't know. But
yeah,
barring a unforeseen breakthrough in battery technology, and by the way, I will mention one because I know some of our listeners will say, hey, but what about that? Because it was on many of the websites, and I think it was published in the journal Science. So it was a peer-reviewed thing that has been around. So they claim to have a a solid state, the same energy density as gasoline, which is a done deal.
That'd be great.
I mean, if that were true, and they could make that commercial, and within a short time frame of say 20 years, well, even then, that's gonna, maybe we will. We don't know that though. And we never mention these things, but it was peer reviewed. Okay, it was peer reviewed. Yeah. And it's just a little hard to believe, but they've changed the chemistry by combining two different things, and they claim that it has 1,000 cycle life and can, it can do everything it needs to do that batteries need to do, and they claim safer and cheaper. They claim cheaper because the electrolytes are a cheaper solution. That ultimately, when it's mass produced and used by everyone, it would be cheaper, which is always the case, which is the same as nuclear.
Yeah. Well, hydrogen reminds me a lot of nuclear because it does, it's always felt like it was never the best solution, but a possible bridge technology. And the problem with nuclear, and I'm tired of complaining about it all the time, it's being pitched as a bridge solution until we can go 100% like solar and wind or whatever. But of course, the problem is it's not going to happen fast enough. So it's not a proper bridge solution at all.
In fact, if nuclear was the solution, solar and wind might be the bridge for that, because
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right.
It's there now.
If nuclear was so great, yeah, that's where we should be working towards. But yeah, maybe in air travel, there is the potential for hydrogen to be a kind of a bridge solution. But just I'll mention another story here from the Hydrogen Insight website. Explosion after explosion. 3 injured after truck towing 420 kilograms of hydrogen crashes and explodes in Ohio. So this is one of the drawbacks of hydrogen, which, was a similar problem that they had with the Hindenburg.
Uncomfortable laugh. Uncomfortable laugh.
Yeah, no, it's not funny. I mean, I don't think anyone was seriously hurt. But this truck got into an accident, it was carrying hydrogen, and it just exploded several times, apparently.
Well, speaking of hydrogen, Nazis. Nazis were on CNN the other day. I was reading on their website, and then I saw that
Did they have a show on CNN?
Not yet. They're pretty much running the channel because Fox News turned them away. It's a neo-Nazi couple, including the founder of extremist terror group Atomwaffen Division, has been arrested and charged by federal officials for an alleged plot to take down the power grid of Baltimore to completely destroy the majority black city. So they were going after Baltimore, hoping to cause chaos and destruction, and they were going to plan to do this after a major snowstorm. So they weren't. This was well planned out. It was thought out. It wasn't just like, oh, let's go, kill the power grid of a majority black city.
So what you're saying is the Nazis had some good ideas. Am I putting words in your mouth?
You are. I spit them out at you. No, the Nazis didn't have any good ideas. It's not a good idea. I'm just saying they thought about it. Damn Nazis. So they plotted to inflict maximum harm to the power grid, and they're not just talking, but taking steps to fulfill their goals. And they understood how the grid worked and what was vulnerable equipment. And but authorities say, the plot was racially motivated, which is bizarre.
Yeah, and we've reported on a couple of instances of grids being attacked with like rifles and stuff. And, hopefully this is the end of it. Brian,
I think grid terrorism is the new thing. I think this is going to continue. I mean, these guys, a couple, had grievances against people with different pigment in their skin. Well, what other grievances do you have? Maybe Washington, D.C. pissing you off? Do you just not like Florida, like me? Who knows what reasons they could go after a grid with a shotgun or, whatever they were going to use. The pair had studied publicly available information about the power grid and allegedly plotted to take it down during peak usage after a winter storm when it was most vulnerable. And plus, people freeze when the power grid is down. So that's what they wanted. So they're targeting specific transformers that are harder to replace. The FBI has been on heightened alert for such plots due to, as you say, recent attacks on power stations in North Carolina, Oregon, and Washington. Though the agency says there is currently no evidence that the incidents are related, neo-Nazis and extremist right-wing groups have increasingly identified attacks on power grids as a potential strategy. I hope it's not you. I blame you if they're listening to our show. Maybe that's who's in Macedonia. Nazis listening to our show. Well, yeah, if you're into white supremacy, go after the power grid, it says. So, yeah, I don't know. Brian, I just don't think it's done. I think we're going to hear more of this. I think this is just because it's so vulnerable. There's nothing they can do about it, right? So
yeah, and it's one of those things where we haven't necessarily planned for that as part of the infrastructure. It's just, power lines are everywhere, transformers are everywhere. And if they're being built now and they're being built new, they're probably being built with more security in mind. But this is a large apparatus that isn't fully protected. Okay, so BMW. So BMW now has over-the-air software updates, which is something Tesla started doing several years ago, and it's definitely going to be a part of the automotive world going forward. Cars are going to be more software-oriented, Anyway, I thought this story was kind of funny. It's from Drive Tesla Canada. BMW doesn't allow software updates if your car is parked on an incline. So somebody in San Francisco tried to update their car, and San Francisco, notoriously hilly.
Very much.
And you get an error on the screen. Sorry, you got to move your car to level ground before you can update it. So anything over a 7% incline, it will reject the software update. And
how does it know? I don't know how it knows.
Well, there's so many sensors in cars now. I mean, obviously they have a sensor that can detect this.
I don't want big auto knowing when I'm in an incline or not.
Yeah. But anyway, the reason is, and this does make some sense, parking brakes in cars now tend to be electronically controlled. So the car is parked, the parking brake is locked, but then you start the software update. It has, you're basically rebooting the car. So they're worried there is a very, very, very slight chance that through the sort of rebooting and software process that maybe the electronic parking brake could become unlocked. And so that's why they wanted to put in that little warning.
That wouldn't be good. A bunch of BMWs rolling down San Francisco hills all at once.
Yeah. And unfortunately, you can't, you could just put blocks,
sure,
behind the wheels,
but that won't
to make sure. But there's no way that the car doesn't have enough sensors to figure out.
Here's my problem.
Blocks.
If I owned one, because I have an SUV for the summer and a camper for the summer parked in the flat part of my driveway, the other half is at an incline.
Yeah.
And if I go beyond that, will I be able to connect to my Wi-Fi? I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. Because you want to be on Wi-Fi for your updates.
That could be tricky.
And yeah, typically with a Tesla, you can't do the software updates unless you're on the Wi-Fi network of some kind. So you'd maybe have to go to a public parking lot somewhere. Go to a McDonald's that has free Wi-Fi or something to get your car to update.
Oh, before we continue, I just wanted to mention that I was watching the Consumer Reports, a video podcast on the YouTube, and they were talking about the new Prius. And, they have interesting points of view compared to everyone else on YouTube because they're old school auto people. And you can sort of over the years see them coming around to EVs. There's the people who are coming around quicker than the other ones. Yeah. I could tell you who they are by name because they're characters, but they didn't like it. They didn't like this new, way more expensive Prius that's coming and getting reviews now. They say it's noisy. They say when you floor it, it's noisy. The cabin noise is noisier than the last one. It's smaller than the last one. And they didn't like the road noise from the tires. And there was an argument, why are they doing this? There's no real fuel efficiency gains. And of course, we've been saying for years, why come out with another Prius? It should be electric. Yeah. That should be their Model S, their every person Model S. Yeah.
And of course, it's been generally getting good reviews, I think, like the ones I've seen.
Killer reviews by your average YouTuber.
Yeah. But to your point earlier off the top of the show, we believe EVs are just a better driving experience. And if you'll remember, over the years, the Prius has been around for 20 some years. Typically, automotive journalists have always hated the Prius. It's always been something that they make fun of because, they're kind of.
They haven't liked the styling in a couple of generations of the.
And I haven't either.
No, I mean it's kind of ridiculous. It has to be like the Model 3, super slippery. In order to have its fuel efficiency, it has to be have low coefficient of drag. It has to go through the wind tunnel really well. Okay.
Yeah.
And what they did here is they lowered it by 2 inches. So, of course, if you make a flatter car that's a piece of cardboard going through the wind, of course it's going to gain fuel economy. Well, they didn't do anything with the engine or the motor. They haven't achieved anything when they added a tinge more fuel economy. And by the way, Consumer Reports was not getting that fuel economy on their rented. They haven't done the full version of their report yet until they buy one, but they rented one and they were getting 40 instead of 53 miles a gallon, so that's way off.
Yeah, but that always bugged me, reading reviews of the Prius, just because it's a specific car for a specific purpose for specific people, but automotive journalists tend to like, fast, sexy cars, and the Prius was not that, so it would always kind of tend to get these crappy reviews, and But of course, we've come a long way, and EVs are, of course, now fast and fun,
Well,
and they do get
in the
lots
latest batch of
good
reviews where people are talking about how good it looks and how it accelerates because it's got some horsepower, a bit more oomph, they have been saying how important it has been, that it was the hybrid, the Kleenex of hybrids. It was what you think of when a hybrid. There's a lot of miles being put on by taxis around the world. And I was just thrilled to get one of those the first time I did. I couldn't believe it. I was a month earlier, I'd seen my first one in the wild, and I was very excited. Like, I had followed this. David Suzuki, Canadian environmentalist, got one in like 2001, and I thought, man, if that was me, I would just love this new technology, this new thing that. And then by the time it got here, of course, electric cars were coming. By the time I got one, electric cars were a thing.
And as we've discussed, Prius sales are kind of slowly trending downwards.
They're way down. They're way down. They're like a quarter of what they were.
Should have been a fully electric version of the Prius 5 years ago.
Yeah, and then for them to do this and then, raise the price on top of it by a lot is you don't raise the price because it's not dorky looking anymore. I don't know why they're doing that. I think Toyota is in a transition period now where they're replacing their CEO and with somebody who can possibly think about the future. I don't know why people cannot think about the future, but he stepped down saying, I can't think about the future, so someone else do it for me.
Now, and I almost think whoever designed the body of the new Prius was probably thinking it was going to be an EV. It kind of looks like an EV.
Sure.
It's, more slippery and aerodynamic. The body design departments, I feel like they were on board with EV, but the rest
maybe
of the
they designed this
not.
Years ago and they just, I don't know. But I don't, as a person who doesn't much care about how the car looks, and I have gotten compliments on it, people think it's futuristic and electric, but and I'm sure the people who don't like it haven't said anything. Good for them. There's probably more of them. But I don't really think, I'm more involved in how the car looks on the inside because that's where I use it. I don't care about other people. I'm more of a practical person.
Yeah. Okay, so we got a couple stories now about wood burning. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago on the show, and there was a couple more interesting stories here that I thought it was kind of worth bringing up again. So these are both from The Guardian. And the headline of the first one, rise in UK wood burners likely to be creating pollution hotspots in affluent areas.
Interesting.
So this is a point that we talked about before, that burning wood to keep your house warm, particularly I think in the UK, is in some cases an affectation of the wealthy. It's not something, I don't know, poor people typically do. So the research here is kind of vague, and it hasn't really been fully done, but like there are researchers that can have like pollution sensing things on backpacks, and they walk through different areas and stuff. And so, I don't think that this is a fully fleshed out idea. It's more a concept at this point, but there are certain pockets of affluent areas, rural areas, where people burn wood to heat their homes in the winter. And this is obviously causing pollution. And I think near the beginning of the show, we had a story of Montreal, Canada, had to create a new law, the city of Montreal, to start cutting out wood burning, fireplaces and ovens and stuff, because the winter pollution in Montreal was quite bad. There were just too many people. For whatever reason, a lot of the old homes were built with wood heat and people were still using them. But it creates a lot of pollution, especially particulate pollution, that is, it's worse really than probably most car exhausts.
As far as creating, because there's more particulate in it, it sticks around and it's dangerous to. It's not a greenhouse concern. It's more of a breathing concern.
So this is something that's being looked at in the UK, and possible kind of regulations coming. But then there's a companion story again from The Guardian. This is in the United States. Wood banks emerge as vital source of heat while U.S. gas bills still on the rise. So a little bit of a counterpoint. In the U.S., there are rural areas that are poor, where people sometimes do burn wood.
Is this like a food bank, but for wood?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. So in the U.S., there are a couple of pockets where, they've created these wood banks, and people are to heat their homes, and either they don't have, natural gas heating, or they've always heated with wood, but the price of natural gas or other heating things have gone up so much that they have created wood banks in one of them's in Maine, and people can pick up wood so they don't freeze.
Wow, that's interesting. I did see an EV hit piece story the other day where they complained about the tires on EVs destroying the air quality because the EVs are heavier.
Yeah.
That the tires supposedly disintegrate and get into the air. Well, what do cars do for air quality?
Yeah.
And what do big pickup trucks with heavy pickup trucks and their tires do? The tires on EVs, I don't think, in my experience, haven't deteriorated any faster. I think they're made to last a certain amount of miles, and that's that. I don't understand where that came from. But it's just one of those stupid, bizarre things that writers write, and makes me wonder who's asking them to write it.
And I don't have the story in front of me, but I did read a story recently. There is research being done about more eco-friendly tires. There is the possibility of making them out of different, more sustainable materials that don't muck up the planet.
Yeah, and I hope that does happen soon. I'm going to update some stories that we may have talked about before over the months and years. 150 episodes, Brian. Congratulations. That's quite an achievement.
Congratulations.
I don't know how the hell we've done it, but here we are. Wind and solar farms with battery backup are both cheaper to build than natural gas power plants in Ontario and Alberta. This amazes me.
Yeah. Here in Canada, 2 Canadian provinces.
It's quite remarkable to think, because one of those provinces is next to us, and we're not doing anything like that here. It's just the fact that we always say, well, okay, these things are, solar is cheaper than natural gas, but we often think of Arizona or California, where it's more ideal, the sun conditions, or Mexico, or the Sahara, or the south of Spain, or somewhere like that, but this is Canada. This is 2 provinces that already the mix of wind, solar, and batteries are just getting going. They're expensive now, and they're already cheaper than natural gas, which, by the way, is fairly cheap in Canada because we have lots of it here. So what the hell? I say to you, what the hell? The price of the renewable options is expected to fall by another 40% in the next 12 years by 2035, another 40%. This is a report from Clean Energy Canada, not to be confused with us. They're an organization in Canada who studies these things and promotes clean energy. So, I just thought I'd mention that. Also, who are the big solar leaders in Europe? The results may surprise you, because I was surprised. Here's a chart I'm showing you, Brian. It's Luxembourg has the most share of solar on their grid than anybody else, and quite a bit more than the Netherlands, which is second. Netherlands, a northern country. And then there's third place goes to our friends in Greece, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago. And they've done most of that really recently, as you can see on the chart. That is 3 years ago. So they've done a lot, and they're already in number 3. And Hungary is next, and Malta, and Spain, and Cyprus, and Germany's towards the middle. Italy's near the middle. Estonia, Denmark's starting to fall in the bottom. Poland isn't so great. France is towards the bottom. Austria, Croatia, Finland. What's wrong with you, Finland? We have listeners in Finland and Ireland.
Yeah, get on it.
And Latvia's the worst, but okay, I'll give that to you, Latvia. But Finland, and come on, you got to do better.
And where is
and Sweden's near the bottom too. No wonder Greta's angry.
Where's Macedonia on the list?
Macedonia didn't make the cut. They've only got 2 solar panels, and those are the people who listen to our show. Hey, I've been worried about this. CNN, of all people, have given me 2 stories this week. Starman, the Tesla that was shot into space with the Falcon Heavy rocket as a payload, he's still out there. And you might wonder, where is he?
Yeah, is it sort of heading out into the universe?
No.
No.
He's in an orbit around the solar system.
Around the solar system.
Yes, so he's going to be sticking here. He'll come within a couple million miles of Earth around 2047 or 2050, in both those years. You know, if he if he slams into an asteroid and nudges it towards Earth and ends civilization, I'll be pissed off at me, Elon Musk.
That'll really suck.
So yeah, 5 years, Brian, is why I mentioned it. They're celebrating. It was 5 years ago on Monday that was blasted off, and that was quite the image, quite the remarkable thing that far more than I ever expected. It was also kind of stupid and weird, but my God, it was stunning as well. And just kind of, you know, made you excited about the future. So it completed, this is what it's done. It's completed about 3 1/4 loops around the sun and was positioned about 203 million miles or 327 kilometers from Earth on Monday. And it'll make 2 passes within a few million miles of Earth, as I said, later on in this century. And the chances the car collides with Earth within the next 15 million years is at 22%. So factor that into your investments.
Well, I imagine most of it would burn up in the atmosphere.
In fact, they don't really know what kind of state it's in. It may have succumbed to solar radiation and not even resemble itself. And I think that Starman would not be doing too well. But yeah, who knows? They don't know really what it is. The odds of it crashing into Venus or the sun are 12% over the next 15 million years. I wish I could stick around to see that. Probably, you know, I don't know. Will we think about this again? Did that actually happen? It's just one of those weird things. Okay, winter range for popular EV models. A new study is out. It is a Seattle-based Recurrent organization. They measured the range loss in 7,000 EVs via telematics. So they were able to hook up to the car and see what they were doing. This is an extensive study. It's not just a random questionnaire or anything. And they were doing it at temperatures between -7 Celsius and -1 Celsius. So that is about 23 degrees and colder Fahrenheit. So the Audi e-tron, -8%.
Only lost 8% range in the winter.
Yeah, not bad. No, it's not winter as you and I know it, but it's sub-winter, or what most people in the world would call winter. 24% on the BMW i3. The Chevy Bolt, not good. Worst one, -32%.
And that's the car you're going to get?
Yeah, but I'm not concerned, Brian, because it's got 400 kilometers, 250 miles range, and we charge it every night at home. So that'll be plenty. It'll be a joy to have that even in the worst case scenario. The Mustang Mach-E, not great either, -30%. The Kona, 19% loss. Jaguar I-Pace, to my surprise, is only a 3% loss. So I don't know how they pulled that off.
Yeah, I'm surprised there's so much variation.
Yeah, there's a huge variation.
I thought it was fairly, you know, consistent.
The Leaf, this is the modern Leaf, -21%. And the Tesla Model 3 is -17%. Now, a lot of people will tell you that it gets to be 30% pretty quick and even 50% in really 40-degree below zero temperatures. But yeah, that's what they were saying in the comments to this. The e-Golf, which is now kind of defunct, was -23. And the ID4, also bad, -30%. So, I mean, maybe because they're cheaper cars? I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah. I something to do maybe with the sort of heating cooling system of the battery? Not sure.
Yeah, because those are temperatures where the heat pump would be operating, right? I mean, it goes down to at least -15 Celsius, if not -25.
Yeah, so it could have something to do with the whole efficiency of how the sort of, you know, heating cooling system works.
Because most of them will be, you know, most of them will put that heat in the cabin because there's no waste heat to put in there, and not much anyway, if you can find some from the computer and from the electric motor. But yeah, you know, cars lose 15%, the gas cars lose 15% quite easily themselves in cold weather, and can go up to 25%. So, but they have bigger, longer range, so, you know, people don't notice it as much. And that brings us to, Brian, the end of the show pretty much, which means, unlike last week, it's time for the lightning round. we're back with another lightning round. This is how we end the show. A fast-paced look at the week in clean energy and climate news. We'll see how fast I am. I'm getting tired. I've got to get up, take my daughter to the airport for her big trip tomorrow morning at 3:30 in the morning. How am I going to do that? I'm too old to stay up all night, Brian. I'm too old to do that. That seems like, that'd be the easier thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to crash into a pole. Bloomberg says.
Or a cab.
Or a cab. Bloomberg. China is poised to become the world's #2 exporter of passenger vehicles, a milestone that could reshape the global auto industry and spark new tensions with trading partners and rivals in the political world. So it's coming. We've been waiting for this since we started the podcast. Approximately 150 episodes ago, we've been talking about this.
No, and of course, there's a whole kind of Cold War going on with computer chips now, and who has the computer chips, and China and the U.S. kind of fighting over that as well.
More than 100,000 green energy jobs from 90 projects in 31 states have been announced since the U.S. put its Inflation Reduction Act into law this past summer. Boom, 100,000 jobs announced.
Yes, and I would mention too, quick story, India plans to spend $4.3 billion on clean energy. That was announced recently.
So they're finally getting serious. And I can't wait to see a clean air India, as well as one that is more stable and more electricity for more people. Elon Musk's DC visit stirs EV charging standardization plot, and I was wondering what you thought of that. Do you think there's any chance anything's going to happen on that front?
You mean in terms of like
standardizing
the standards?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be business as usual for that. I don't see anything changing really.
Norway is set to pilot the world's first ever industrial scale vertical axis wind turbine. They look weird. They look like something you might see on top of a building.
Yeah.
But the turbine is down at sea level, so it's bottom heavy because it's floating. So these are floating wind turbines, and they're putting the weight at the bottoms to make them more stable. And they're twirling, and they're going to be catching winds in the North Sea off of Norway by the end of the year. Yeah,
these are crazy looking things where they rotate, I guess. How do you explain that? Vertically or horizontally, or
vertically, like a baker making a cake with the
like a blender,
sure,
like the blades of a blender.
Yeah.
But I don't know. They look like they would kill more birds, but that's probably just a weird assumption on my part.
I have to agree with you there, but we'll see how that works. Time for a CS Fast Fact from The Guardian. Averaged over the whole year, home fires in the UK produce more particle pollution than the exhaust of all traffic on our roads, tying into what you said earlier.
That's really bad.
That's averaged over the whole year. Home fires in the UK produce more particle pollution than the exhaust of all traffic on their roads.
It's as we alluded to when we first started talking about this, it's kind of appealing because it seems like a more natural solution. You cut up a tree and you burn it, and it is technically carbon neutral because trees absorb carbon when they grow. So if a tree's been growing for 100 years, it's absorbed a lot of carbon, and then you cut it down and burn it, then that carbon gets released again, but then you plant another tree and the cycle continues. But because we're in this climate emergency, we need to cut down on that burning of trees. If that's all we did was plant a lot of trees and burn them, we might have been okay.
Sure. Nissan tells U.S. dealers the Aria will be limited supply for this entire year.
Yikes.
Screw you, Nissan. Japan, what are you doing? You're screwing up. You're making me nervous. I don't want to see you guys go away. A motorcyclist who traveled 15 miles every day for a year had an astonishing 1 in 860 chance of dying. So if you travel 15 miles a day on a motorcycle, you would have a 1 in 860 chance of dying.
That seems high.
A person who took a 500-mile flight every day for a year would have a fatality risk of 1 in 850,000.
85,000.
Oh, 85,000, pardon me. It was just astonishing to me. And
well,
a random fact.
Just booked a flight, that makes me feel a lot safer.
I told you not to take your motorcycle, Brian. I told you. For the first time, the world invested as much money into replacing fossil fuels as is spent producing fossil fuels. So 1 trillion green investment last year has matched what those damn bastards in the fossil fuel industry have done. BYD to begin construction of a gigabyte energy storage system in Las Vegas. So BYD is coming into Vegas and putting up a half a nuclear of storage and batteries.
Yeah, a lot of car companies also getting into battery storage.
And I didn't know that. You haven't heard anything like that, especially in North America. I don't know what they're doing in China, but I have not heard of them doing it here, and now they are. So that's good because we need everybody doing it. Japan is expanding offshore wind power generation beyond its territorial waters and into its exclusive economic zone, the EEZ, in a push to achieve carbon neutrality and ensure energy security amid Russia's war in Ukraine. So an exclusive economic zone, what is that, the EEZ? It was prescribed in 1982 by the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which you do not want to break, Brian. I know that I have a couple of times, is an area of the sea in which a sovereign state has special rights regarding the exploration and use of marine resources, including energy production from water and wind, and stretches from the outer limit of the territorial sea, which is 12 nautical miles from the baseline of the country, out to 200 nautical miles. So, yeah, they might have to change a few laws and things, but they are going to look at that and say, okay, up to 200 nautical miles, wind.
Yeah.
So
typically that's what you own is 200 nautical miles out.
And the Washington Post ABC poll finds 62% of Americans think the president has accomplished not very much or little or nothing. I disagree. This is kind of sad that the American people are not understanding how huge what he passed was last summer, the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah, I guess if you're not into climate news as we are, it might seem like nothing, but it's true. That's a big deal.
Westbridge adds another solar plus storage project to Alberta, Canada. Right next door, they're putting in 1 gigawatt pipeline of solar and storage next door. And what do we have here, Brian? Basically, rooftop solar on my house and your house, and
that's about it.
Something a little bit bigger, 10 megawatts. That's nothing compared to what they're doing there, because they've got basically a free market system, which is incentivizing people to do that, and it is cheap and unsubsidized stuff. Well, it's really good.
I know that's tough for a communist like you to admit.
It is very tough, Brian. And finally, I'm not a communist or a Nazi. And this is 2 accusations you made this week. 2 very different ones. And finally this week, last month, the United States Senator Joe Manchin, speaking of Nazi communists, said, I can tell you the last thing that would ever be left on in our house is a gas stove when we cook on. I think
you should read that again.
I can tell you the last thing that would ever... It's written wrong. I can tell you the last thing we would ever leave on in our house is the gas stove we cook on, says Joe Manchin. But the Huffington Post, well, they found out that Manchin, he doesn't even have a gas stove, so he's full of it. Full of it, Brian, full of the fossil.
Yes, and a lot of the rhetoric around this issue of gas stoves apparently is in states where hardly anybody has them.
Of course. That is our show for this week. Thank you so much for listening. Please take the time to contact us. We love it when you do that. cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel. We're all over social media, as our handle is @CleanEnergyPod. And thanks to all our donors who have clicked on the donate button in the show notes. And if you're new to the show, and I hope you are, subscribe, because we're here every week with stuff, and it gets better and better and exciting and more exciting, Brian.
Yeah, happy 150 episodes, and we'll see you next week.